before the germ theory of disease was officially put in place in our ideological culture, we were already convinced that disease was coming from elsewhere other than in our own bodies. We were, for a long time, convinced that disease was coming from spells, curses, and devils, bad spirits. And then around the time of Edward Jenner, when he was doing his most popular work, which was about 60 years before the germ theory was really officiated, people were veterinarians of the sort, people like that. They were starting to opine that disease comes from just some mysterious, some unknown force, contagion. Because because they notice that when one animal is sick in a herd, often the sickness spreads, and maybe half the herd will end up with the sickness. And people like Edward Jenner and others were saying that sicknesses can come from animals to humans, and they can evolve into other kinds of sicknesses. And so before the germ theory of disease, there was kind of vague and indeterminate notions of disease causation that weren't quite superstitious, but they were still not proven. There were no controlled experiments to show that anyone could cause anyone a disease without introducing the filth of another animal or person's disease in a way that just would never happen in nature, such as inserting it in a cut in your arm. Then you might be able to give someone a fever. These were the kinds of experiments Edward Jenner was doing. And he was saying, Edward Jenner was one of the people saying that cowpox came from horse grease, and smallpox came from horse grease, and he said it came from cow grease at one stage. Off the top of my head, I can't remember which one he settled with, but obviously we're saying that cowpox gave some people protection for smallpox. That was before the germ theory of disease. So this was already cemented in at least the British culture, that disease is not spirits, it is some kind of material, some kind of force. It seemed to be insinuated that it was material contagion. Now, the most obvious picture to everyone that they took off with to come up with this contagion theory was that everybody getting sick at the same time in a similar manner. It's likely, makes sense that there's a contagion that spreads throughout the people, because take note that everyone doesn't wake up the same day sick. It starts out in a small number and it spreads. And same with the animals. When the cowpox goes through the cow herd, they notice that it generally wasn't just one cow. And again, they don't wake up to a whole half of a herd with cowpox, but sometimes that can eventuate. This is still kind of how we are looking at it today. But today when Robert Koch did all these postulates, they noted that if for the bacteria, for a virus even, there is the microbe is necessary for the disease, but it is not sufficient. There is a bodily factor involved. That means the terrain of the cells need to be fitting for the microbe to proliferate. Somehow we carry on still as if the microbe is the primary initiating factor of the disease process that it features in. Some people at the time when the contagion theory and the germ theory even was being cemented were saying, people like Charles Creighton, they were saying that, look, when the cows all live together and do the same things, get milked in the same kind of way, maybe a overexertion of a certain gland, the same gland, maybe it occurs more often in the springtime and seasonal changes, that half the herd or so will end up with sores of an extraordinary kind of the organ that is being used and of an extraordinary nature for this animal. And even the people who are milking the cows and getting sores on their fingers, they are all doing a similar thing, and it is also unnatural to have all those chemicals that parcel of milk, especially on the rotten teats, the one of the sores, to be on your skin all the time. That's all chemistry, and you're not doing very good for your skin chemistry when you're working like that, and you have to keep working. You got to feed your kids. This is pretty dire circumstances for a lot of these people back then, and even today. So the vaccination idea took off, and I've talked about that in other videos, but basically that took off without any controlled experiment. Edward Jenner never got 2 children, or 4. He only had 1 child and put smallpox in them after he put cowpox in them. The kid got sick, and he was okay 14 days later after the cowpox, and then he got the smallpox, and I don't think a fever was reported. To note, I don't know if he was supposed to get smallpox or how much he put in that kid, because people used to put smallpox in their kids to try to give them a little version of it, so that they wouldn't get it later on, or maybe when they're sick they won't get it. What I'm saying is, to this day and age, if it was Edward Jenner, he would have to have probably 100 kids, and even just 2 cloned kids. Hypothetically speaking, if he put the cowpox in one and not the other, wait 2 weeks, and then put the same amount of smallpox in both of them in the same way, and make someone mask Edward Jenner, to the fact of which one is the cowpox recipient 2 weeks earlier, which one was the cowpox recipient, that's called blinding the observer. That's a control. That's what Edward didn't have, and perhaps give the other kid, instead of a smallpox insertion, the one who isn't supposed to get the cowpox, the vaccination, Edward should give that kid a placebo, or not even Edward, someone else. What I'm saying is, there was no controlled experiments. It was just, hey, I think this is working, and then it took off, and then we ended up finding strain-specific microbes associated with disease, and noting that, look, people get sick at the same time, they have, in a similar manner, and they have similar microbes. We cannot cause someone a disease when we put the microbe just in the air, or in a way that it is naturally introduced in the environment. But we can cause an organism disease when we just inject it, a heap of them, that'll do. We cannot really test for that, because it all comes down to, grey waters. The immune system has to be fitting or not. Really, the bacteria probably only proliferates in cells. It only has anything to eat in cells that are half rotten, not viable anymore. And that's where we're at today with the contagion theory. Some virologists are saying that there are no disease-causing viruses. And some people are saying that there are no contagious microbes or diseases at all. I think even some virologists are saying that. I think Stefan Lenker is saying that, but he might not be. I'm pretty sure Stefan Lenker, the PhD virologist and molecular biologist, is saying that there are no contagious diseases in existence. There is no such thing, and there is no such place in his view of biology for such a function. It would not work out. He's more or less saying that his best guess is all of this disease, all of the entities associated with it, you cannot blame one entity as an attacking force. It's all working in together. Like, one good example to tie this up with might be the horticulture industry. They say things like, oh, if there's this method of growing plants in cocoa coir, and you have to water it once a day or once every 3, depends on the kind of setting and the kind of plant. Some people say, well, you can just water it the whole time, put water on it, keep a little bit, not just once a day, just keep dripping it with all the nutrients, the hydroponic nutrients. But if you do that, if you water it too much, the funguses will grow and attack your plant. The issue is the funguses will be able to grow because there's enough water there all the time that they'll attack your plant, and it won't be good. But what's actually happening is with this cocoa coir method, you are supposed to, every time you're watering the plant, you're supposed to get 10 to 20% of what you are putting on the plant running off. So that way you can ensure that there is a good changeover of materials happening, because a lot of salts are left over from the plant when it takes in from the medium of cocoa coir what it wants. There's a lot of salts are left, and a lot of salts and etc. are excreted, and a lot of other things are left. Yeah. So we need to have a 10 to 20% runoff every time we water. If we don't do this, all these salts left there, all these materials that we even call them antigenic because the plant doesn't want them there, but I don't think the plant really makes, maybe it does make some kind of antibody or some kind of protein to go out there and apprehend the salt, hold the salts so that they're not dangerous, or dilute, I don't know. But when this is happening, if this doesn't happen, if this plant cannot flush all these unwanted materials like you're supposed to do with a 10 to 20% runoff, if that doesn't happen, the roots in there will begin to degenerate. All the cells that the roots are made of will begin to degenerate. funguses will proliferate because the plant, when the cells are degenerating, it can't eat as much. The materials, look, the fungus they grow and they eat the rotten roots. And what causes the rotten roots? Well, the thing that causes it is the thing we are addressing when we implore to people, make sure you do 10 to 20% runoff. Some people don't do it still because they don't see why you would do that. But then you tell them that it's because the fungus will attack your plant. They might listen. I think they do listen. That's how they interpret it. They say, well, I don't want the fungus to attack my plant, so I won't water it too much. They don't realize that it's not watering it too much that will cause the fungus. It's not watering it properly that will cause the fungus to proliferate. The fungus that proliferates when disease is present in the plant, in the root area, when degeneration of the plant cells has occurred, has begun. Pathogenic funguses, they call them, because they proliferate when there is a state of disease, not a state of health. So the people in the horticulture industry seem to still be just addressing it as if the fungus is the main issue. That, this is bad, and then this is how you stop this from happening. You do this properly. For some reason we're not, it's like we're not carrying a story over properly. It's that the funguses will end up growing in the same plant. You'll end up rotting your plant if you don't water it properly in this kind of medium. Spider mite eggs are everywhere, and they will only proliferate on cells that have already degenerated.